We're back with Season 7, Episode 18? 18, Daring Done. This is the episode in which Rainbow Dash, Pinkie Pie, and Daring Dude go down to Sonambula, which I hear pronounced a couple different ways, and while they're there, they must defeat the evil Caballero from his evil schemes of being a dickwad. They succeed the end. So, scroll up a little bit. I love how Pinkie Pie bothers to read all of the tiny little tidbits of news. Because of course she would. She's someone who is incredibly detail-oriented and absolutely would be the one who wants to know everything she can about everything possible. She's got a brain for it, right? We've talked about this, but Pinkie has an astonishingly coordinated and organized brain. I mean, the number of facts and details she keeps just in memory, never mind in her notes, is nuts. So it's a nice little bit of character building there. Recently, as a result of working on both the lore... Yes, I absolutely do, as heroes. Recently, as a result of working on both the Lorecraft series and on the theater stuff, I've gotten even more appreciation than I already have for people who work in animating, especially since I have done a few animated works myself. I just wanted to mention that because it gives me especially larger amounts of appreciation for when I see Rainbow Dash give 6 separate, distinct expressions while she's reacting to the news that Daring Do has retired. That's just... I know I talk so much about how the animation on this show is awesome. Stuff like that is why. That was several hours of someone's life putting together each of those expressions, you know? Anyways, so this then leads to, she just retired today, or yesterday, as they find out later, and yet it's in the news for today's paper. This is going to sound like a weird comment. You ever wonder what Equestria's communication lines are? We never really discuss that. We've seen people, they have mail, they have physical mail, but that's kind of slow. That's physical speed. That's speed of getting there physically. But obviously they have some kind of information. We know they have electricity. They have cities, for God's sakes. So it's just a weird thing. Oh yeah, we also have the dragon. I wasn't even thinking about that. I'm just wondering. Yeah, it's probably magic. Yeah, it's almost assuredly. But it's strange because they've discussed infrastructure on most levels. They've discussed transportation. They've discussed how magic works and how it can be used for transit and how it can't be used for transit. And just most of the aspects of what I refer to when I say that generalized word of infrastructure have been covered at some point or another throughout the course of the show, but not communication. It's just interesting to think about. And this isn't technically the first time it's come up. Like, for example... they find out within, like, a matter of days that the Crystal Empire came back, back during Season 4 or whatever that was. But obviously they have some kind of communication network going. It's food for thought. Anyways. So, Pinkie Pie and Rainbow Dash go over to AK Yearling's house. Can I just say that I love the fact that it's Pinkie who's like, we're here to help her, right? Not make her write more books? Because, of course, Pinkie would be the one focused on the friendship, the actual caring about the person. But what I love more about that is that this is actually a little bit of character growth being presented for Rainbow. Not growth now, growth that's already happened. Because if you rewound time several seasons, I guarantee you Rainbow would be here to get her to write. In fact, I'm going to just paraphrase here. We need to make sure and take care of her so that she spends every single waking minute and second writing the next book. You remember that line? When they first started talking about AK Yearling and her connection to the Daring Do series. Now, my reason for bringing that up is she obviously still cares about the books, and she still wants her to write the books, but she also cares about her friendship and the person, and the person is more important than the book, and that is growth. That is a showcasing that, Mr. Red. You're back! Holy crap! I don't have any confetti. So, I do like the showcasing. I always love showcasing character development like that. That always adds for me. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and give that a continuity counter. That specific thing. I should probably update this. With one bit from later. Oh, for the... I get you, I get you. So, they get there. Pinky narrates, you know, she's sighing as if she has the weight of the world. What's funny is, obviously that's being done for a gag, but I 100% believe that Pinkie Pie is good enough at reading people to be able to interpret body language enough to actually be getting that from her. 100%. Totally believe it. And given that we know that AK Yearling is going through some stuff, yeah, she probably is actually accurate in her narration. So then Rainbow is like, you don't understand, we're here to help you. Now, the thing I love about this, Rainbow, even though she does primarily care about the person, is still Rainbow Dash. She's a little pushy, a little bit. And so she literally physically gets right up in AK Yearling's face and starts insisting that this has to be fixed and insisting you tell us what's wrong right now so we understand everything. And it is Pinkie Pie who physically intercedes and gets in between them and says, but if you don't want to talk about it, that's okay. Because we're here for your friends, and sometimes friends don't want to talk. Pinkie is actually kind of awesome in this episode, legit. It's pretty much exactly how Pinkie Pie should be, and it's not often I get to say that. Because I guess I shouldn't say that. Pinkie, about half the time, is who she is, should be, and about the other 30% of the time, she's this weird thing. So it's nice to see her actually being herself, you know? Right, Rainbow? Anyways. This then leads to the concept of collateral damage. How many of you read comics? We'll go with the big two, DC and Marvel. But how many of you read comics, you know? I suddenly can't think of any of the other ones. Vision? No. I can't think of any of them. Probably because I'm stupid. But superhero comics, anybody? I suppose I should raise my hand on this one. I used to read it more. Yeah, there's no collateral damage in the DCAU. No, of course not. The world of cardboard speech comes from the DCAU, for those of you not aware of that. The reason I bring this up is the idea of collateral damage. It's actually an old one. This came around at around the late 70s with regards to the comic verse. And collateral damage is a topic that I think they've done some good stuff with over the years. Not always. Most of the time, the approach is to ignore that it exists at all. You know, I've actually talked about this before in my movie ruminations. You ever watch a movie and then watch someone smash up like 5 cars as they're fighting someone else? And I want you to think about that car, and I want you to picture that that's your car, that you don't have the money to repair, and you still have payments on. And you're going to have to explain that, yeah, sorry, the Hulk was fighting the Abomination in downtown Brooklyn, so, you know, I kind of lost my car. It's not hard to imagine how horrifically devastating, even to an individual person, it is to, you know, see some of that collateral damage. I bring that up, though, because when they actually talk about the topic, it's kind of cool. Sometimes they go the irritating route, which is the, you know, you have caused this damage and you suck route, which is stupid, if I'm being blunt. Yeah, sorry, next time I'll just let the entire world be destroyed. My bad. Incredibles. But sometimes they actually address and analyze how, well, this is a thing that is a problem. Sometimes in the midst of a desperate combat with a foe who is specifically trying to hurt or kill you, you don't really have time to avoid collateral damage. In fact, one thing that's brought up in both DC and Marvel several times is that the heroes are usually technically fighting harder than the villains are. Because the heroes have to not just defeat the villain, which is all the villain cares about, they have to defeat the villain and minimize collateral damage. Yeah, to put this into video game terms, most of the heroes have to accomplish this, whereas the villains only have to accomplish this, right? I kind of think the MCU Civil War movie did a pretty bad job of addressing it, but yes, is the answer to your question, S.A. Ross. Hang on, I got a donation from Vigilant. Oh, that is... I had to reread that like 3 times, Vigilant. I thought you said it wasn't well, and I'm like, no! What went wrong? Thank you, Vigilant. Very much, as always. By the way, we might actually have an updated website as of tonight. I've been in contact with Zalok this morning. after Lore Week, and we might be at the point of functionality. I don't want to say that definitively yet, but maybe. Yeah, it depends on the Revan. That is a good point, Blue Hero. Sometimes the villains aren't interested in collateral damage. I've got a comic book example for that for you. Lex Luthor, who is someone who goes out of his way to try and just remove as much of the collateral damage as they can. I mean, Civil War is a good movie. I'm not disagreeing with that, Darth Madoro. But I absolutely despise the way they presented the message. There's even a valid point there. They just didn't even bother to address it, in my opinion. It's just the same old tired garbage. Hey, you saved the world and some stuff got broken, so screw you. What? Maybe I'm have a harder time of that because I'm so sick of that. Because I've been hearing that for 30 years now. Anyways, getting back to the point. That is the topic being addressed here. AK Yearling isn't a superhero, but she is. Daring Do is, in every way that matters, a superhero. She doesn't have superpowers. I mean, she's a Pegasus, but she doesn't shoot eye beams or whatever. But the way she operates and interacts is the same space, the same category, or trope, or style, or however you want to call that, of what a superhero does. The same way Indiana Jones and Lara Croft both qualify in the same manner. This is also one of the reasons why Lara Croft usually spends her absolutely ridiculous amount of money, smoothing things over. That's why she's rich. This is, by the way, this is also one of the... Yeah, she's a cape. Thank you. It's a great way to put that better on. This is also one of the reasons why... See you around, Blue Hero. Have a good one. One of the reasons why so many comic book characters bother to go out of their way to have at least one person on their team who is stupidly rich. This is not a joke. The writers have acknowledged that they usually try to make at least one super rich person who can help smooth over the collateral damage problem. I mean, DCAU had, what, 3? Just in the Justice League. Anyways. Now, ironically, Miss Yearling here is actually rather rich, which is appropriate, so that's nicely done. But the point is, she is absolutely causing this kind of collateral damage, and this is a real issue. Now, she is doing it for good intent. Rainbow Dash even bothers to explain in one scene the reason she left in a hurry without, being able to stop the people who are coming after her, and didn't have time to pay her bill, was because she literally had to get this thing back because there was a deadline on it. Rainbow covers the process of what went through there in order to make that happen. So it's not like she isn't helping, and it's not like she isn't saving. It's just, well, like I said, sometimes you're fighting at a different, at a level in order to deal with it. But, as S.A. Ross says, it doesn't pay for the dude's apple cart. That's why this is an interesting topic when it's brought up properly, in my opinion. Because the alternative is, if you do nothing, then, well, everything's screwed, right? Because then the place is cursed and the town sinks below the sands. So the guy's apple cart is kind of screwed then, right? So you kind of have to destroy the guy's apple cart. You do. So what do you do about that? Like, the reason this is a dilemma is it's not whether or not you destroy the apple cart. That's guaranteed. Because the only alternative is sitting on your hands and pretending you're the Federation. No, what you have to do is decide what you do afterwards. What you do next. How you cope with that. How you compensate. How you tell Eric that he's awesome, despite everything. And you're probably thinking, what has he done to not be awesome? Eric likes strawberries. See you around, Mr. Red. Now, unfortunately, in this case, the answer is easy. Because she's rich. You just pay for the replacements, right? In fact, I'm a little surprised the answer to that has never really occurred to her before. It's not like she lives opulently. And she makes tons of money. Anyways. But we'll come back to that point later, because that's the last point. Wait a minute. You can put strawberries on cheesecake? I wonder if anybody delivers cheesecake around here. No reason. I'm just curious. Hang on. Just give me a second. If not, I could just hit the grocery store and buy cheesecake. Or I could just have Bragwin delivered. Looks like no. Unless the... What? No. Yeah, no. Looks like that's a big fat no. That's okay. I accept that. I don't want cheesecake right this very second. What are you talking about? They have pound cake. They have candied yams? Has anyone ever had... I don't think I've had candied yams. I have had red velvet Oreos. And fried red velvet Oreos. Anyways. Most likely Imperial Star Destroyer. But the point is, obviously, she isn't living opulently, is my point. She has disposable income. By the way, if you haven't had red velvet Oreos, if you're one of the people who likes red velvet, like I am. Coconut. Ugh. I hate coconut. Anyways, I'm getting way off topic. The point is, collateral damage is brought up, and there is actually some... oh, you brought up coconut. God, I'm stupid, Gum Gum. How do you have a healthy coconut cake? How's that a thing? How do you make it healthy? The point is cheesecake. I do like the collateral damage equation. I don't think this episode qualifies as one of the good examinations of collateral damage, because the answer's too easy. What do you do if Tony Stark destroys a building? Well, he pays for the replacement, and pays to help the people who are displaced by it. The answer is easy, right? Because he's money. One of my favorite little tidbits, Avengers 2, Age of Ultron is not a great film, but there's a lot of little cool moments in it, and one of my favorites is, can we buy that building right now? As he's chasing the Hulk into it, because he wants a spot where he can just fight the Hulk without worry about it. Yeah, Wayne. Bruce is another perfect example of this. Or, I can't think of his name. Green Arrow, or whatever his name. I can't think of his freaking name. Another good example. Moving on. So, Pinky, as usual, is the detail-oriented one who asks the correct question. Why is this happening now, as opposed to earlier? Since you've always done this, AK Yearling, so... Oliver, that's it, thank you. Why is this a new thing? And of course, it's a valid question, as we'll find out. Rainbow Dash also, of course, brings up the concept of the silent majority, which is something that is so obvious I shouldn't have to mention it. And the episode doesn't really discuss it, so I'm just going to move past the point. This leads us to probably the most valid point both bring in convincing AK Yearling that this isn't an issue. Listening to the press about what people think about you is not the most accurate way to operate. You ever heard that phrase, never Google yourself if you're a public figure? Because don't. Just don't. Yeah, even in Equestria, I mean, these are herd animals, as we'll discuss in a moment. This then... this music. It's on random, I swear. The next thing we find out is that there's a southern Equestria and a northern Equestria, and the two are distinct. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but that absolutely got my writer mind exploding, for lack of a better way to put it. Because all of a sudden I'm like, oh my god, do they operate as different states? Do they have different political borders and boundaries? Is this all part of one kingdom? Because kingdom has to do with... legal definition of a kingdom is multiple states being inside of it. That's why the United Kingdom consists of, you know, the various countries that exist within it, right? So maybe the Equestrian Kingdom under Celestia and Luna actually consists of multiple states within it. It just, I don't know, just like I said, my brain just kind of started running with it. Do they have economic connections? Yeah, we know Southern Equestria had a pharaoh, so they had their own independent governmental structure. That was an unknown period of time ago. I mean, we can extrapolate because that was during the time of the Pillars, which was before the time of Celestia. So that was a while ago. The other thing, though, and this is the point at which I'm not willing to give the episode credit for it. They're basically hand-waving away the fact that Southern Equestria doesn't know, or sorry, no one knows that AK Yearling and Daring Do are the same person. And the excuse is that they differentiate, you know, they go over there and they go over there, and that's the thing that they know, right? And that's... okay. Is there no communication? Despite the fact that they have this near instantaneous communication thing I brought up earlier. Oh, that's true. Twilight published the diary. Yeah, no, that was a full-on hand wave, to be blunt. And I don't buy it for a second. And that's the problem. What I would have done, and I know this would effectively, reduce the point, but I would have made it so that A.K. Yearling goes public in the wake of Twilight's diary. You don't have to make it a whole thing, although you could make an entire episode about this concept. Just have her be like, yeah, no, I'm Daring Do. I am Iron Man. And then there are consequences for that. Like there were for Stark. When everyone knows you're the superhero, when everyone knows you're the Cape, your life does change a bit, right? As opposed to Parker. Well, actually, Parker's a perfect example because in several comic book stories in the past, Parker has been ousted as Spider-Man, and there's always been consequences for that, both good and bad. Instead, they just kind of hand wave it away and say, nah, nobody knows. Okay. Sure. I'm not gonna bring it up too much. Just wanted to point it out. This then leads to definitely not Caballeron. Totally not him. Even though it's the same voice actor and voice and face, and he's acting all shifty, and totally not him. He starts bad-mouthing her, that's to say, Daring Do, and all the ponies go along with it because they're herd animals. And for the third time, I think in a row, but at the very least for 2 weeks in a row now, we once again have the main topic of ostracization. Why does this keep coming? Is this the season of ponies who are ostracized? I mean, Pony of Shadows in the finale. I was thinking about that while I was watching this episode, because I was like, damn, this topic just keeps coming up. Oh crap, it comes up in the finale too. And we will be talking about it in the finale. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about the ostracization thing. This is probably the worst type that exists. When you are accused of something that has no basis in reality, and everyone just kind of goes along with it. They dogpile you. I've actually been victim of that more than once in my life. But I imagine there's plenty of other people who could say that too. I can name 2 public figures, I'm not going to name them, who have also had something completely false said about them, and everyone just dogpiled them as a consequence of that. What was going on in 2017? That's a good question, Imperial Star Trek. It could be a plane. That is possible. The Atmoplane instead of the atmosphere. So, it could also be that what she does is she does this. Right? So, instead of gradual sunset, sunrise thing, there's just, you have day and you have night. And that would make a degree of sense. Even for a, planet. That would also mean there's some places which kind of get half and half if you're, like, right on the border. That sounds like a cool story idea, actually. Live on the place where it's always day-night, and then night-day, and then day-night, right? Like, it just swaps. Anyway, sorry. What the hell was I talking about? Right, so, ostracization. Like I said, this is the worst type that exists, and this happens way too frequently in real life. It's disgusting and awful and terrible. Twitter joke. Now, that being said, it is nice to see that Caballeron is absolutely awful at lying, but what's also interesting is if you're paying attention, even though what he says is a lie and what Rainbow and Pinky says is the truth, you'll notice both actually use the exact same technique to get the crowd on their side. Did you catch that? This is, again, that whole herd animal thing, and let's be honest, we do that too as people. We just kind of sway this way, or sway this way, depending on what the current narrative is, for lack of a better way to put it. We then get into our history lesson. I know, right, SRS? We get into our history lesson. I actually don't have much to say about this, unfortunately. As usual, it's awesome seeing more about the pillars and more world building. This is where we find out about the pharaoh that was mentioned earlier. We have this nice low frame rate 2D animation thing, which was kind of awesome. By the way, did anybody else catch that pyramid is totally a Goa'uld pyramid? Totally. I didn't catch that the first time I watched this episode. We also find out that sphinxes are a real thing. Or a sphinx is. Is there one? Are there several? Of course, we don't know, and I don't know if this is ever brought up again. But just food for thought. It's also pony-based, because of course it is. I love the cultural implication of a particular gemstone becoming a symbol of hope by virtue of its connection to an individual, by the way. Again, we do that before. We do that in real life. We kind of associative symbology is a pretty common thing. It's just cool to see how it is expressed here. Yeah, I don't know how to spell it. Guauld. And Bregman already got there for answering you. So the episode has actually been really cool so far. It's like, yes, this is awesome. Hang on. Then the episode just kind of stops being good for like 3 or 4 minutes. It's not a huge chunk of the episode, but Rainbow Dash, who has been standing right next to and actively conversing with and against Caballero, doesn't recognize him. And then Pinky gets tired running through the desert, which I'm not even going to talk about. And then Daring Do's like, I've got to save her, even though I've lost hope. Oh, and also Rainbow Dash successfully gets jumped and captured by some thugs, despite being Rainbow Dash. And then she just goes along with it, despite being Rainbow Dash. This is one of those times where I actually sympathize with the writer, as weird as that may sound. Because what we have here is contradictory goals with regards to the writing. Most people don't really think of this that way. When you're sitting down and writing something, you actually do have objectives to accomplish with regards to your story. So in this case, we need someone to be kidnapped and rescued by Daring Do so that she can actually have hope, because the whole faith is actually a better word than hope, but the whole point of this whole episode is like, oh, we've got to restore her hope, and she's got to restore her faith in herself, and blah blah blah. Like, that's the core central pillar of the episode, no pun intended, or pun intended, depending on how you prefer it. So we need these things to happen. So the writer decided, well, between random NPC, Pinkie Pie, or Rainbow Dash, the one to get kidnapped is Rainbow Dash, because she's the one that would have the most emotional impact for Yearling. Okay, that makes sense. But then, rather than coming up with any manner by which Rainbow Dash could actually be, attacked and kidnapped, instead, they don't. They just go from point A to point B, and there we are. Which is the definition of because plot. And I've talked about this since some of the first videos I've ever done, all the way back in the Voyager videos when I first started doing this as a job. I'm here. I need to be here because plot. So Rainbow gets kidnapped. Sure. And then she gets tied up in the no-flying area. Okay, that's okay. It's just a no-flying zone, so that would explain why Rainbow would be at a disadvantage and couldn't just fly out. Alright, I'm with that. Also, quick aside, it is worth noting that the no-flying thing being a magical curse actually makes surprisingly a large amount of sense. Why? Because not only does it prove that the pillar existed, which is actually an important foreshadowing point, and that the Sphinx existed, which is the world-building point earlier, but it also ties into what we've already known about Pegasi, and Weouts has mentioned this several times as well, that Pegasi are magic. They don't cast, like the unicorns do, but they magically fly, which is logical. If you attach wings to a pony, it's not going to fly. That's not how physics works. And I know, I'm talking about physics in a cartoon, but it still applies in a degree, because there is still a logic, there's still gravity, there is still density, there is still, the movement through the air equation, I can't even think of the name of right now, etc., right? These things are demonstrably still a part of the setting. So, they need magic to fly. Shazam! Magic is reduced, and we're good. And yeah, I was going to say, we've actually seen this several times before. We've seen this with nature of how they can interact with clouds on Cloudsdale several times. We've seen this with Tirek, the season finale with Tirek, where he actually was absorbing Earth Pony magic and Pegasi magic. I don't remember if that was the specific moment. It was 100% confirmed on episode that Earth Pony magic existed, but you get the point. I just wanted to comment on how logical that was and how sense-making that was, as opposed to just being, because plot, like so much of the rest of this section of the episode is. Because then we get to a little bit more because plot. How did they get her to the pillar and then get out without a bridge and without the ability to fly? And how is it sinking down into... And how is... But is... Moving on. So then, they have a vent jumping puzzle because we're playing Ori and the Will-O-Wisps, apparently. But even despite this kind of... I'm still with this episode, but then the episode does the other thing wrong, which I'm not in favor of. Caballeron just decides to steal all the glow paths, nice name by the way, in broad daylight of everybody and everything. And then when caught on it, immediately gives away his entire evil plan in front of everyone. For no reason. Now, I know, it's part of the kitsch. I get that. But it is still pretty stupid. I would have gotten away with it, too. If that, yeah, it's legitimately face-palming, and I don't want to sound too negative. Hey, Sarah Mike. But honestly, Caballeron just deciding to give away everything kind of hurts the episode for me. Like this whole section of the episode, pretty much from the moment the flashback ends and we cut to Caballeron kidnapping Rainbow to Caballeron giving away everything. This section of the episode kind of sucks, if I'm being honest. It's some decent action, it's some great animation, and there's the one little nugget of decency with regards to the magic, but other than that, this is all just a whole lot of... Okay, now we're done. There's a whole lot of because plot in this section. The intended Aesop in the episode is stated outright by the characters. If something bad happens you didn't intend, you shouldn't lose faith in yourself. That's an interesting Aesop, especially since there's a lot of validity to that. It could be better expressed in a different way. Just because you make a mistake does not mean you are a failure. Right? And that is a very good lesson for adults and kids both. Let me relate a story to you. My niece and I have been playing through pretty much every week as I go over Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. Now, I know I've mentioned this before, but forgive me for those of you who haven't heard me say this in brief. It is a platformer game that is hard. It is not an easy game. It's one of the harder Donkey Kong games. Now, she has a thing that I remember from back in the day, because I used to be like this too. She will try to make a jump, and she'll fail at it, and immediately go, ugh, and just, I don't even want to do it. Because she's failed, or rather, she has made a mistake once, and she doesn't want to try again because she's already failed. I bet a lot of you know exactly what that feels like. What I've been doing each time is encouraging her, it's okay. I'm standing right here, because we're playing co-op, right? So as long as I'm there, she can just remake the jump. So I'm like, it's okay. I'm your safety net. Make the attempt again. Okay, that method isn't working. Rather than trying, and I'll give her specific advice, because it's a platformer. I know platformers are my bag when it comes to gaming, right? So I tell her, try to hold down the jump button only about half the length you're doing it, and let go of left so that you just kind of drift onto the platform. And she's like, no, you didn't let go of left. No, it's okay, take your time. And I don't push her, but I kind of do push her to keep trying. To not let that first failure be the time at which she throws in the card and says, nope, I'm done. Because that is an extremely common problem for people of all ages. Hell, that's a problem at a corporate level. I cannot tell you how many times, just to bring this back to video gaming for a second, how many times a company has tried to put out Game X, I'm not going to name examples, and it has failed or flopped because of circumstances, and they say, well, we're going to give up on that, when that is actually kind of stupid. Because one of the other things that happens a lot in gaming is they put out Game X and it sucks, and then they say, oh, well, we've learned a whole bunch and we figured out what to do. Then they put out Game Y, which is a smash success. I can actually name a specific example that off the top of my head. Devil May Cry. Now, for those of you who don't know the story, in brief, Devil May Cry 1 actually has nothing to do with this. Let's just throw that out the window. But they were putting together Devil May Cry 2, and it was, it's just such a mess. Behind the scenes, it's an absolute mess. Rather than cutting the cord and giving up on the franchise, they decided to go ahead and give them another chance to do it properly. And we got Devil May Cry 3. Same team, by the way. Not a lot of people know that. The same team that made Devil May Cry 2, with a couple of exceptions, made Devil May Cry 3. And if you don't understand the significance of that, 2 is dog garbage, just trash. Dog trash. That's what I was trying to say, and I stuttered because that's not a word. But we're going to say it. 2 is dog trash. 3 is an amazing game and one of the best of its genre. Because they learned from the failure. I love Sierra Mike's comment there. Fail is first attempt in learning. It's a wonderful acronym. Yeah, Zelda 2 and Zelda Link to the Past is another example of this. There's too many examples, historically speaking, where failure shouldn't be the end. And that is a absolutely good lesson and a fascinating way to present that. And of course, then they have the hero insurance. You know, A.K. Yearling has the money to pay off and repair the Apple Cart and yada yada. And again, that is the easy answer because she has that money. It would have been, oh God, I can imagine that, Aseros. Imagine, if you will, that A.K. Yearling didn't have the money to replace those things. That would be an interesting dilemma in its own right. And frankly, could be the topic of an entire episode by itself. How do you make up for all this collateral damage when you can't just pay for it? How do we rate this one? Oh, she would too. Obviously, she cares. I mean, you saw how down in the dumps she was at the beginning of the episode. Hey, XXX beloved. Hey, I'm glad you liked the Dragon Age rumination. I'm assuming you mean the second one, not the first one, because I really threw myself into that second one. My goodness, it's actually my longest rumination ever. Would you believe it? In terms of density, there's a separate metric for that. Hi, Elizar. I will admit, for an episode I barely remembered, I only really remembered this episode for the pillar. I was surprised by how much I was enjoying it. I'm not sure that it qualifies as red. In fact, I don't think it qualifies as red, especially given the entire last act is blah. But I do think that this isn't bad. You know, I do think we're at least at yellow and up at this point. I'm seeing some oranges and some yellows. Several yellows. I'm fine with yellow. It is kind of an average episode. It's got some good parts. It's got some bad parts, which sounds familiar. Honestly, I'm pretty sure without the world building, it would be a lot worse. See, yeah, I'm feeling I can't quite justify an orange myself as I'm sitting here processing and thinking about it. I can't quite go that extra step. Not only because the stuff drags it down, but because the rest of the stuff just isn't quite good enough to justify it. It's enjoyable, but it doesn't have a lot of meat on it. It's like having a red velvet Oreo, right? A red velvet Oreo is good, but that's like an orange, right? A red would be a nice slice of cheesecake, and a purple would be an amazing custom homemade dessert of awesome, which my sister made and is amazing. That's true, Eros. I would agree with that. I don't know if I would call this an arc counter episode. I suppose I have to. Now that I'm thinking about it, because this episode absolutely could not have happened without the previous episodes. In the same manner that the previous one was. Because we've got the Daring Do establishment, the Pinkie Pie, who is fully in character, Rainbow Dash, who is mostly in character, and has shown, again, showing the development she's already had, and the connection between her and the establishment. You know what? I'll give this an arc counter. I think this counts. Oh, man. I'm going to have to go back and count all the arc counters at some point. That's a good question, Elizar. Off the immediate top of my head, there are 3 characters that come to mind for that, and those would be Maud Pie, Luna, and, of course, Starlight Glimmer are my 3 favorites off the top of my head. Oh, I'm sorry, and Discord. Obviously Discord. So, my 4 favorite characters. I shouldn't have to explain any of those. No, Rarity is still up there. Rarity is still my favorite of the main 6, and honestly is probably the one I am most like, as we've discussed before. Workaholic, ambitious. other traits I'm not going to go into right now. Look, I'm a fashion geek. What do you want from me? Anybody who's played Dark Souls is a fashion geek.